about what happens when you come up with great ideas in the United States. When you come up with great ideas and you get in the way of corporate profits. And what ultimately ends up happening, and what has happened to a lot of interesting people over our history, and how they just disappear.
Convinced that the U.S. government is totally transparent about energy.
No, I think they're totally opaque about energy.
Really? Tell me.
Oh, yes. I think the U.S. government probably has unlocked 0 point or close to 0 point energy, which would be pulling energy out of the vacuum. We have inventors that have done that over and over and over.
And making energy of apparently nothing.
Well, we could start with, there's a man named Charles Pogue, who in the 30s tinkered with his carburetor and was able to get 200 miles a gallon.
I mean, could you imagine what it would be like today if we had automobiles that got 200 miles to the gallon?
Well, we can't. That would never. That's why they couldn't allow that. They cannot allow that.
But it's possible.
Well, a lot of things are possible if you don't have, greed and corporate whoredom. But, that's just not where we are.
Not yet.
All right. Gezin wants us to do the race meter. Can we just do it and get it over with?
Fine.
We got to do it. We had it before, but.
Okay. Gezin apparently doesn't like getting 20 miles to the gallon on his car instead of 200.
It was engineers, investigated scientists. It's totally proven. It worked. He was going to be a zillionaire or whatever. He's going to transform society. And the problem was, once the news of his engine got out, the oil stocks crashed. They just crashed. So the oil industry lobbied the U.S. government, we have to do something about this. And in 1951, the Invention Secrecy Act was passed. So now, if you patent any device that is more than 20% efficient, that's instantly classified. That is now a state secret. It's vital to national security. You can't talk about it. You can't build it, and you can't sell it unless you sell it to the U.S. military. You cannot do it. That went on for a while. And then there was a man named Tom Ogle.
Jen.
And Tom is this is the 70s now. He accidentally rewires his lawnmower engine to take the exhaust and pump it back into the carburetor. And this thing runs on a gallon of gas for 78 hours or something like that.
I remember on a Bill Maher episode years ago, I want to say like 2010, 2011. And he said at the time, do you realize that there has been no standard improvement when it comes to MPG averages in automobiles since 1985? That we're still getting the same average per automobile as we did at that point, which was almost 25, 30 years ago, that there had been no improvements. Does anyone really believe that there hadn't been improvements and that ultimately it was the corporatization of our government that prevented it from coming out? I would think just about anybody with a reasonable amount of independent thinking would agree that, yes, we probably have been lied to for a very long time. The Honda Civic was getting 49 to the gallon, was being the key word.
He reconfigures his car. It's like a 1976 Ford Galaxy, like a boat. And he's getting 200 miles to the gallon on the thing. He's offered $1 billion from an oil-producing country. Shell Oil offers him $25 million for the patent that he considers, but they're going to shelve it. So he says no. It's considered, maybe one of the biggest inventions of the century. Suddenly, Tom, without a history of drug use, stumbles out of a bar. He's drunk and he's killed. And that's the end of Tom Ogle's story. And that all disappears. All that research goes away. And this repeats over and over and over again till we get to Stanley Meyer. And you might remember Stanley Meyer and the water car, because this is 1990s now. So now we have a vehicle that we're not even talking about fossil fuels and protecting a multi-trillion-dollar industry. We've got a car that runs on water using electrolysis, which has been around since the 1700s. But electrolysis requires a lot of energy and perfect water without impurities. But Stanley's figured out how to take tap water, put it into his car, and run his car on water. And what it does is splits the water into hydrogen, oxygen, runs on hydrogen. Hydrogen is a fuel, it works. And it works, and he drives it all over the place. It's all over the news. Engineers look at it. They say, this is the invention of the century. This changes everything. He's offered $1 billion and millions of dollars, and everyone wants his engine. And he's sitting at a Cracker Barrel with his brother and some investors, and they raise a glass to toast the new investment and go into the future. And they take their toast, and Stanley suddenly doesn't feel well. He runs outside. He starts vomiting. His brother chases after him and says, what's going on? And Stanley says, they poisoned me, and he dies.
Huh. Okay, so people need to know how context as to who this is and who's speaking.
Curtis Yarvin. Is that his name? Let me confirm. That name sounds familiar. Curtis Yarvin. No, he's somebody else, but he does advocate. You know what? Let me see if I can confirm. Give me 1 second, guys. I should be able to confirm who this is.
But essentially what he's talking about is how people who have created alternative power systems and energy systems to fossil fuel have been Epsteined. Is that basically what we're talking about?
Yes, that is correct. The Y Files, is that what this is? Yeah, I think that's his channel.
Yeah, he's the host of the Y Files on YouTube, is what I'm looking at in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, what have we said about conspiracy theories? They're truths that just haven't been accepted as fact yet, pretty much.
And in the medical examiner's report, it says he died of an aneurysm. But if you read the report, you can tell the medical examiner didn't really like that, because he wrote some other stuff like, oh, he said he was poisoned, but toxicology doesn't really show it. But it says he died of an aneurysm. And that technology is now gone. The patent's useless because Stanley faked the numbers because he didn't trust the government, because he had another invention that most people don't know about before his water car.
That's his name?
Which was this toroid ring. A toroid is a donut. This donut-shaped ring that he invented that created energy out of nothing and levitated. But he patented it. It got hit with the Secrecy Act, and they made his life miserable. But people started to learn about that, and that brings us. There are other inventors in between. Townsend Brown invents this anti-gravity technology. He runs into all kinds of bad luck. All these men have their research stolen. They're broken into. They're carrying guns. They're threatened. They're disappearing. It happens over and over and over again. I have an episode on this. It's very sad. And we get to Floyd Sparky Sweet. He's my favorite, because his inventions, he videotaped all of his stuff. And you see him in his workshop. And Sparky, he's an engineer. He's a garage tinkerer, but he's an engineer. And this was supervised by the military physicist. Maybe it was a mistake. And you see him running a fan at high RPMs. And then he's got light bulbs, all of this energy, and it's all running off this little box the size of a deck of cards. And he puts in 0.03 milliwatts, and he gets out all the watts you want. It's a device that no matter what you attach to it, it just, whatever the need is, it will give you the energy. This is Sparky Sweet. This actually connects to UFO technology. I don't know if we'll go there, but it does connect. So Sparky's got this invention. He gets some help from a military physicist. Gets a visit late one night, 2 men in suits come talk to him, say goodnight. He has a heart attack. ambulance comes, they grab Sparky. The wife is not allowed in the ambulance. He dies. Soon after, a couple of black vans pull up. They take all his stuff, all his notes, every piece of equipment, and it just disappears. And that's the last we hear of it.
About when was this?
I would say this is late 90s. I mean, Stanley Meyer was 1998. So
This
this
is
is
recently.
recently. Yeah.
Now, some may think that some of this is kooky stuff, and that's fine. But do I think that there's a lot of truth in what this guy's talking about in terms of how the government keeps things suppressed? Kind of like the Epstein files, kind of like the truth about our elections, truth about UFOs, truth about whether or not we're living in a simulation. All jokes aside, when we have opportunities as we the people to make our lives better, the powers that be will always figure out a way to either shut us up or just remove people altogether and steal their technology, and also make sure that it never comes to surface. It's one thing if their intention is to just steal the technology because they want to use it for themselves. But at the same time, is it really a stretch to think that big oil doesn't employ mafia tactics when they want to remove people that are in their profits?
Have we not covered the Stephen Donziger story at length? Yeah, that's exactly what they do. They completely use mafia tactics. I mean, of course.
And on top of everything else, who do you think wants us to go to war with Iran more than anyone else? It's the military-industrial complex of which big oil is completely intertwined with. It's all one big clusterfuck. And as we know, the military-industrial complex has the biggest carbon footprint out of any entity in the world. The United States military, that is. So yes, when there's an opportunity for more war, more profit, yes. And will they kill people as a result? Well, they've dragged us into plenty of conflicts, plenty of times. So this is one that's not going to change. And so I bring this up to conclude matters for this evening because I think there's a very important point here. When we ask ourselves, why has there not been a revolution? Why is it that people haven't risen up and have wanted to, deal with this problem? As Panagenis says, if you're going to read anything, read War is a Racket by Major General Smedley Butler. Everything is a scam for rich people, and everything that they put us through is basically one giant scam. If you get in the way of their bread, they're going to do what they're going to do. Now, I will probably address this on Saturday regarding what's going on, as some of you may have been paying attention recently when it comes to precious metals and what's going on in the world of gold and silver because of the devaluing of the US dollar, the growth of the BRICS currency that is going to be backed by gold, the hoarding of precious metals by China, the devaluation of the metal futures in the US stock market. When the empire crumbles, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be very ugly.
We're in it.
We're in it. It's happening. That's why we talk about revolution. Not because we're trying to scare people. We're trying to have people come to terms with the reality of the world that we're living in. We are going to have a revolution in the United States, whether you want it or not.